Sitting is resumed, and we move to questions to the Executive Office. Nicole John Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 1.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have not yet agreed a timescale for the appointment of the Northern Ireland Climate Commissioner, but members may be aware that the draft Northern Ireland Climate Commissioner regulations, which will give us the power to appoint the Climate Commissioner, are currently scheduled to be debated here next Tuesday, the 8th of April. Provided that those regulations are approved, we will move quickly to agree a timescale for this appointment. We will ensure it is made in line with the Code of Practice for Public Appointments, which can take up to 6 to 9 months to complete after the process is commenced. Work will also be taken forward to put in place the necessary infrastructure to support the Commissioner, such as securing suitable office accommodation and appointing staff to their office.
Mr. Blair.
Thank you, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for that reply, and I look forward to seeing those timelines. But before we see those timelines, can I ask the Deputy First Minister if this is going to be a regulated appointment, by which I mean an appointment regulated by the Public Appointments Commissioner?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for his supplementary. As indicated, we will be making this appointment in line with the Code of Practice for Public Appointments. I understand that it hasn't been formally added to that, but as the member will know, we can, of course, make those appointments in line with that, and that's the intention that we have.
Eva Finnegan.
Can the Deputy First Minister detail the timeline for establishing the Climate Commissioner after the regulations have been made?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for her supplementary question. As the member is likely aware, there are a number of key steps that we do need to take, particularly if this is an appointment process that is carried out in line with the Code of Practice. So there is a formal nature to that. Of course, we will follow all of those steps. We will endeavour to get the advertisement out for this as quickly as possible and to conduct then whatever interviews that need to take place and then perhaps a presentation by those shortlisted as well. But we will endeavour to get that done as quickly as possible, but the timeline is likely between 6 and 9 months.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister have any concerns about the cost of such a Commissioner, particularly given how tight budgets are at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you. I thank the member for his important question. Indeed, in light of the spending statement of last week by the Chancellor, everyone around this chamber will be aware of the difficulty and the financial challenge that we face in terms of the huge amount of work that we need to do to invest in our public services and the limited public funds that we have to do so. Indeed, the costings of this office initially is estimated to be about £1 million per year. I know this issue was articulated at the time of the legislation that there was concern, and those are concerns that I do share about what role a Commissioner will in fact play. We of course can draw on the Climate Committee, a UK-wide body, for that advice, and I think there is a risk of some duplication in this role. This role was included in the legislation that was passed by this House, but I have to say it wouldn't be my preferred way forward. I don't think that there is a particular need for a Climate Commissioner at this time, but it is a legal duty that falls to the First Minister and myself, and that's why we are moving forward at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask, just picking up on the theme of the last question, the projected cost is £1 million per annum. Is that confirmed that in fact will be the committed budget to the project, to that office?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank the member for his important question. Indeed, it is estimated that really that's an initial cost. So that is your basic cost for a very basic structure within any of these Commissioner offices. As indicated, there are a number of UK-wide bodies already in this area, including the Climate Committee, which we can draw advice from. But indeed, under the legislation, there's a number of new bodies proposed, including a Just Transition Committee, and each of those bodies does bring with it a significant cost. So I do think that is something for us to be mindful about, but the £1 million that is projected in terms of business case projections, that's very much based on a very basic structure. So of course that would be the minimum that would be required per annum of this type of post.
Question 2 is withdrawn. Nicola Brogan.
There were 3. Let hold question number 3, please.
Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Communities in Transition is part of the Executive's programme on paramilitarism and organised crime, and since 2019 it has delivered over £26 million worth of support across 8 areas. Over the last year, many thousands of people have engaged with CIT programmes, including counselling, social action projects, accredited qualifications and support in schools. Evidence indicates that these local initiatives continue to be at the forefront of tackling a range of problems caused by paramilitarism and organised crime. CIT participants reported a 7% decrease in feeling like paramilitary groups had a controlling influence in their community. There was a 25% increase in individuals feeling that their communities are now more resilient to resist criminality and coercive control. There was also an 11% increase in building positive relationships with the PSNI. And on a more general basis, 60% of young people reporting back that they had a feeling that they could access health and wellbeing support, and further 36% having a stronger voice in their community.
Ms. Brogan.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer. Can the Deputy First Minister give an assessment of the impact of this programme on tackling paramilitarism, criminality and organised crime, please?
Sir.
Thank you, and I thank the member for an important question. There's a number of different ways that we measure this. I've highlighted some of those sentiment surveys that we do, from those who partake initially in the programmes to those when they complete their particular projects. And that's really positive to see that particularly young people participating do feel more resilient. They feel that they have got more ability to resist those types of activities within their own community. They are more positive in terms of looking to the future. But it's not just that. Of course, at the heart of this programme is around driving down that criminality and ensuring that communities have that social capital that enable every community, no matter where that community is across Northern Ireland, to thrive. So to that end, there are some statistics that we also measure in order to assess the success of such a thing. And while there may be a range of different factors that come into play, I am pleased, for example, that there has been a 60% reduction in paramilitary-style attacks since the commencement of the programme. There's been a 71% reduction in the number of households, for example, presenting as homeless due to paramilitary intimidation, and the number of related convictions for paramilitary or organised crime-related activity has increased 7-fold from the outset of this programme.
Mr. Dixon.
Speaker, thank you, Deputy First Minister, for the answers to your questions so far. Deputy First Minister, given the urgency for communities in transition to be free from the corrosive and indeed difficult circumstances that they find themselves in under the jackboot of paramilitaries and drug-dealing gangs, can you set a timeline for communities to be really transitioned and free from that behaviour?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. I've said it before in this place, I'll say it again. There was never any justification for paramilitary organisations or for criminal behaviour, for the thuggery that we have seen in the past, and sadly too much of it in the present. That criminality should stop. That criminality demands a criminal justice response from the agencies. They have my full support in doing so, and indeed I believe they have the full support of all of the executive members and parties to do so. But of course we want to help and support communities to have that community resilience and the robustness in order to resist those who do attempt to assert control over them. And that's very much what this type of programme does. This is supplementary to the criminal justice response. But let's make no mistake, there is no role for criminality whatsoever in our society of today, and there never was in the past.
Just McNulty.
And thanks to the Minister, or Deputy First Minister, for her answers thus far. Deputy First Minister, given that the police are currently investigating intimidating paramilitary branded letters being delivered to residents in Lisburn, how can the Executive's efforts to tackle paramilitarism be improved, since there is clearly much still to do?
Sir.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for his important question. I think first of all is around showing that political leadership, but also standing politically shoulder to shoulder on these issues, to make very clear that no matter what political party that you are from, or what particular position your party takes on a constitutional question or on the spectrum of political views, that we stand together and united against criminality, thuggery, criminal gangs and any remaining paramilitarism. So I think it would be really positive for us to send that clear message today, as we have done before, to say this is absolutely wrong, it ought to stop, intimidation is never acceptable, and we stand united on that.
Timothy Gallison.
Mr. Speaker, civil servants came before the TO committee last Wednesday and were unable to answer the basic question of when does a community in transition become transitioned. We know that Phase 3 of this fund is going to concentrate in the same 8 areas as Phase 1 and Phase 2 did. At what point, Minister, will we look to move this to other places within Northern Ireland and not solely focus on the same 8 areas that were first identified, and that was back in 2016?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his important question, because of course if government are having these types of interventions, you want to see progress in those particular areas targeted. You don't want to have to keep returning to the same areas time and time again and putting even more investment in, if indeed there is no positive outcome from that. I think there's been really positive results from many of these projects that have been rolled out, particularly those that have engaged closely with the PSNI and with young people in those local communities. But he is absolutely right. There is no presumption, as I understand it, that in terms of Phase 3, that this will apply to the same areas. These areas were selected at a particular time based on research at that time that looked at historic issues, looked at community tensions, looked at levels of criminality or particular behaviours. So of course we must be open to look at other areas, and where there is a need, then of course those areas should have an equal opportunity to partake in these projects so that all communities are supported regardless of where they are.
Anyone else? Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A draft paper was produced by the Interdepartmental Working Group in early 2022, which set out an initial assessment of options for consideration and as a precursor to more detailed analysis and development of a business case. The working group was then stood down. TEO officials are reviewing this assessment alongside other developments and will provide us with advice on next steps. We are currently considering the report from the recent SIB review. The recommendations from the review will also inform this work. Decisions on the way forward will be a matter for the Executive, of course, in due course, but Executive papers, as the member knows, are not routinely published.
Mr. McGills.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for her response. Deputy First Minister, the Department for Infrastructure was allocated the largest capital budget in the history of the Northern Ireland Civil Service. Do you agree with my colleagues and I that the Commission is needed and that this paper needs published urgently, given an Infrastructure Commission was first explored and proposed by a Ministerial Advisory Panel 5 years ago in 2020?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. I think the most important thing in all of this is the assessment about whether or not this will actually make a positive difference. I think it is notable in that context that the Infrastructure Commission in England has now been rolled into another organisation as well. So they have tried that as an idea and they have moved on from that and made some changes, which indicates to me that they felt that it perhaps didn't do what they wanted it to do as initially envisaged. So I think from our point of view, we want to assess whether or not this is the right way forward. We do have the Strategic Investment Board. We do have ISNI, which is the Executive Strategic document around infrastructure, and we need to look at how we improve on all of that. But at this stage I could advise a member that I am open-minded as to the way forward on this. I simply want a structure that works and works better than what we have had before and actually delivers against the ambition that we have on infrastructure. So I will look forward to officials giving us those recommendations where we will discuss this, and as I said, the Executive will consider it as well.
Can the Deputy First Minister outline a time frame for a publication of the final investment strategy?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for her question. Yes, this is under active consideration at the moment. Over the last number of months, we have been working with officials within the department and within SIB to just finalise some elements of that. Of course, much of the capital that we have available is already committed to existing projects. But as I said in response to the previous question, it's really important to us that those projects start to come in on time and on budget. That has not been the way that we have done capital projects before. So it's not just about getting that strategy out, and we've committed to doing that over the next number of weeks, but it's also the structures around that. How can we deliver our capital projects in a better way than we've done before? How can we make sure, insofar as possible, that they hit budget and they hit time frame? Because of course that enables us to do more with the capital budget we have.
Declan McAleer.
Councillor McCoy, question final at all.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, Junior Minister Cameron will answer this question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The groups delivering under the Central Good Relations Fund and Community Relations Council Core Funding Programme undertake vital work in our communities, bringing people together, promoting good relations and contributing to the Programme for Government's cross-cutting commitment to peace. The Central Good Relations Fund received 220 applications from groups for the 2020-25-26 period year, requesting a total funding of £7.1 million. The assessment process will complete in early April 2025 and groups will be notified of the outcome of their applications before Easter. Also, a total of 42 applications were submitted to the Community Relations Core Funding Programme for the 2025-26 year period, requesting £2.75 million against an available budget of just £631,000. Applicants have now been informed of the outcomes, and successful applicants have either been awarded funding or placed on a waiting list should further funding become available throughout the year.
I thank the Minister for her answer. Minister, could you give your assessment of the cross-cutting commitment to peace in the programme for government? Thank you.
Thank the member for that question. The cross-cutting commitment to peace will make sure that everyone feels the benefit of a growing economy, improved environment and a fairer society. Equality of opportunity and good relations are obviously central to this goal, supporting the immediate priority of safer communities. And keeping communities safe enables the confidence to live productively and engage fully in society, which we all want to see. So such a commitment to peace will require an ongoing commitment to tackle both sectarianism and racism.
Keith Buchanan. Junior Minister, so far for answer. Junior Minister, how successful and impactful has the TBUC scheme been?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for that question. In terms of the success, just to give you a little bit of update on what is happening and what has been delivered. The Community Relations Council is a key partner in the delivery of good relations, as we all know, under the TBUC strategy. And the CRC work collaboratively with the Executive Office to deliver strategic outcomes for the funding that they distribute to ensure that they are aligned with the Programme for Government and with TBUC policy. So the Community Relations Council is responsible for funding programmes across the region to tackle sectarianism and racism, build good community relationships and deal with antagonisms that are a legacy of the past. Resource allocations provide for CRC's activities, including grant funding, community development and support services, which includes HR, IT, finance, governance and facilities. CRC is a small organisation with an average complement of 17 staff. The grant distribution is core to the work of CRC, and as far as possible the resources allocated to funded groups are protected by minimising cuts to grants and programme costs. CRC has 6 funding schemes tailored to each to promote certain aspects of community relations, including core funding, community relations, cultural diversity, the North Belfast Strategic Good Relations Programme alongside Media and Publication Scheme and its Pathfinder programme, the second core delivery approach for CRC community engagement and best sharing practice on effective approaches to peace building, reconciliation and good community relationships.
Anne Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, question number 6.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will answer questions 6 and 11 together. The First Minister and I are fully committed to promoting Northern Ireland in the US. Earlier this month, we both led a Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce delegation to North Carolina that deepened the economic and innovation partnership we have with North Carolina's highly successful research triangle. As part of that mission, we invited the Governor to make a return visit to Northern Ireland to see what we can offer to them, particularly in relation to collaboration. I travelled on to DC, where I continued to promote greater understanding of Northern Ireland in meetings with the President of the United States, with members of Congress and with other powerful stakeholders such as the US Chamber of Commerce. Promoting Northern Ireland in the US has a number of benefits in the short term and for Northern Ireland's economic future in the longer term. Promoting Northern Ireland through ministerial visits, inward visits and through the work of the Bureau focuses attention amongst investors and decision makers on our economic opportunity in particular. It also ensures issues like the impact of tariffs or the benefit of a special economic envoy are better understood. They allow us to showcase and to strengthen our cultural links, such as our role in the forthcoming 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. In addition, we brought the Clarity Jug to DC to highlight not only Northern Ireland's great sporting achievements, but also our location as a top venue for major events and tourism. We will continue to take every opportunity to ensure Northern Ireland's voice is heard on the world stage.
Mr Kingston.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer. And indeed, all the media coverage of that week was very positive here back home and was a credit for those who turned up and spoke up for Northern Ireland. Can the Deputy First Minister outline how important it is for political engagement with the US administration, particularly given the current uncertainty around tariffs and global trade?
The First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for that important question. Of course, since we were in DC just last year, there had been a change of administration in the Republic of Ireland, in the UK, and also, of course, in the US. So it was an important time to be able to engage not just with business in terms of our economic potential, but of course politically as well. And I think it was a very good opportunity. We got the chance to talk to a number of key people. And of course, over the course of that week, we saw the issues of potential tariff implications for Northern Ireland, for EU, for UK, all emerge. And I think it was a really key for us to be there, to be able to speak up, to turn up and to, of course, champion Northern Ireland and the very particular issues that we have.
More.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for her answers so far. But the Deputy First Minister was in Raleigh, North Carolina and Washington DC. Can she detail what opportunities she had to engage with business groups on building economic links between Northern Ireland and the US, given that the University of Ulster's world-renowned research centre is based in my constituency, as is the most secure data link between the UK and America?
Sure.
Mr Speaker, I thank the member for his question. I do want to recognise the incredible work that not just our businesses do. It's not just about that US investment in business in Northern Ireland, it's also about that collaboration and our investment in the US. And we've got many, many examples, particularly through our universities, but in the space of that creativity, innovation, research in relation to aerospace and composites, so all different types of areas of expertise and high skills, but of course cybersecurity being a key one as well. That's why it was so good to see the work at first hand in terms of those collaborations, particularly between the Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce and the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. A huge amount of commonality in the areas that they've been focusing on, including of course life and health sciences as well. And I do think that this engagement of a state to Northern Ireland to state level engagement is one that could produce very, very strong economic potential for Northern Ireland, particularly at a time where you do have a federal economic policy led by President Trump that may mean that from an economic perspective it's a little bit more challenging in relation to that FDI. So plenty of good work to be done, and I want to recognise and praise the Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce in particular for recognising this opportunity, but also the universities and so many other businesses that took time to be out there championing Northern Ireland and everything we have to offer.
John Stewart.
First Minister for answer. Deputy First Minister, you'll agree with me, I'm sure, that we have many excellent businesses here who punch well above their weight and export into the US market, but naturally many of those business owners will be concerned about the changing world picture, particularly tariffs that the USA are looking to implement. What lobbying did you do on their behalf, and what can the executive do to promote and protect those businesses to ensure that our manufacturing sector still has that base in the United States of America?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for his important question. Look, this is an issue that will and does create some concern out there, particularly within the business community. It is a complicated issue. I know that there's been a significant amount of work done at UK to US level to try to secure exemptions, particularly for the UK. That would be of benefit to Northern Ireland because, of course, because we are operating the UK customs market, all of our exports are UK exports and therefore would not be impacted by tariffs coming from the US if indeed the UK is excluded from that. It is more complicated the other way, and I took the opportunity just this week. We met with the French ambassador, we met with the German ambassador to the UK, and I took the opportunity to raise to both of those my concerns about the potential retaliatory tariffs and how that may impact in terms of our exports. The US is our number 2 export market. It is our number 3 for imports. So this is a very important issue. I think more than ever this year it was critical that our voice was heard. Can we always dictate the outcome of these negotiations? Absolutely not. But the very least that we can do is to do our best to make sure that Northern Ireland is on the radar and people are aware of the implications for Northern Ireland of these big global decisions.
Paula Bradshaw.
Deputy First Minister, for your answers. I wonder, have you started conversations with the US administration around the replacement for the Special Envoy? As we know, Joe Kennedy III did an amazing job of putting us on the map. Thank you.
And I can assure the member, yes, absolutely. I took the opportunity right throughout the week to raise this issue to everyone that would listen, including to the new UK ambassador to the UK, Lord Mandelson, and asked for his support in his representations and his engagement with the US administration. I raised it directly with the President in the conversation that I had with him. And I outlined very clearly how positive those economic links had been in the past and how much we appreciated that support and help in terms of making sure Northern Ireland was heard. But of course I took the opportunity to raise this with a number of people, including of course the nominee for the new US ambassador to the UK. Had a very good and lengthy conversation, detailed conversation with him, not just about tariffs, but of course about this issue and how he can use his role to champion Northern Ireland as well to the US and this administration.
Hunter.
Your answer so far, Deputy First Minister. One of the key issues I hear so often about in my inbox and in my office is around the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. I know you were in DC for a number of days. Is this something that you had raised directly with the US President himself or in wider discussions on your trip?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for her question, and of course I would share with her that we all want to see peace in that region, and of course I'm sure that we would want to extend our support to those who are trying to seek to cement that peace, to get that peace, because of course that is the best way to avoid this terrible human toil of any conflict, no matter where that is. I didn't get an opportunity to raise this directly with the President. I did, however, briefly touch on Ukraine and my desire and our desire to see peace in that region as well, and to urge a peaceful resolution to that. But my conversation with the President very much focused on Northern Ireland. You don't always get very many opportunities to do so at that particular level, so I wanted to make sure that our voice was very clearly heard and that the championing of Northern Ireland, to make sure that Northern Ireland was on his radar, particularly in the context of the current ongoing discussions, particularly in relation to tariffs.
Dan Forsyth.
Please, Mr. Speaker.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Building on our successful visit to the US, the North America Bureau is developing a plan for engagement across the US and Canada. The plan will also take into account the programme for government, the emerging priorities of the Trump administration, and our core strengths in relevant areas such as cyber and tech, creative industries, the Open, and the Ulster Scots links to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. The plan will maintain Northern Ireland's bipartisan support by engaging with the next generation of leaders from both main parties to promote Northern Ireland's exceptional cultural, political and economic offer. The First Minister and I are fully committed to building on the relationships we have not just in DC but in key locations across the US and Canada, where economic opportunities, strategic partnerships and policy innovations can help us deliver our ambition in the programme for government.
Mr. South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy First Minister has mentioned that next year marks the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. How much of an opportunity is this to highlight the significant role that the Ulster Scots, the Scots-Irish had in building modern America?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for her question. Of course, with a name like Hannah, we know that there's strong Ulster Scots links there, and I commend the member and all of the work that she does to promote the rich heritage and culture of the Ulster Scots community. And of course it's a fantastic opportunity. I think it was notable when I was in the US how many around the current administration, but across so many of the engagements that mentioned issues such as the Gulf in Northern Ireland. And it shows that this isn't just about the economic offering, it's not just always about the hard sell, but it's also about that soft diplomacy and using the unique things that we have, the incredible things that we have to really get noticed in terms of a very crowded market very often, all vying for that investment. And this is a fantastic opportunity. The 250th anniversary gives us the chance to explain and explore the rich heritage, the shared heritage that Northern Ireland, the Ulster region in particular, have to the US, and how many of those Ulster Scots, or Scots-Irish as they're called in America, have those links to politics, to business, to commerce and to culture. And indeed, I said that my briefing for the trip said 11 presidents had links to the Ulster area. Gordon Lyons, our Communities Minister, who did a fantastic job promoting this all week, said it was 17. But I'm pretty sure, Mr Speaker, by the time it gets to the 250th anniversary next year, it'll be all 47 presidents will have established a link to Northern Ireland and the Ulster region, and we'll be doing everything in our power to promote that as much as possible.
Moving on then to topical questions, Nicole Slade-McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Deputy First Minister, on the restoration of the Assembly, you pledged to recognise and respect differences and to work tirelessly for all people living in Northern Ireland. Do you still stand by this commitment today?
Mr Speaker, yes, absolutely. I very much, and I hope that I have demonstrated that thus far in the 14 months that I have been in this role. I am deeply proud of this place we call home. I'm deeply proud of Northern Ireland. I will champion Northern Ireland at every opportunity. But the biggest strength that we have very much is our people. And the richness of that, our diversity, but also all of that that brings us together, the commonality that we have and the ambition that we have. So, of course, I will champion every person, every community and every part of this place at every opportunity.
Ms McLaughlin.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister, for reaffirming your commitment. But it is meaningless when your party blocked funding for Forest na Gaeilge and opposes Irish language signage at Grand Central Station. Is your vision for this place limited to one part of the community? Surely it is in no one's interest to manufacture another crocodile moment. There is far too much work to be done.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I can assure the member that I will continue to work for everyone throughout this place, because one thing for sure is growing the economy, providing good jobs, getting an affordable childcare strategy to support people from right throughout the community here in Northern Ireland, tackling those health waiting lists, because as I said in my remarks some 14 months ago, these are things that do not discriminate. These are our core public services, and that's absolutely what I am focused on doing. I don't agree with her categorisation of a number of those issues. A proposal was put forward to change the funding formula for all North-South bodies. That is something that had been set in place from the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, and it was there for a reason. There is a particular issue with funding that came about because of an Irish government issue with pensions within that organisation. So, of course, the Communities Minister is working with the Irish government to try to find a resolution to that. And, of course, the concerns that have been raised, for example, with Grand Central Station, it is incredibly important that people have the ability to raise concerns and ask the question as to why £120,000 at a time where it is financially very, very difficult, £120,000 is being proposed to be spent to rip out nearly new signs and to replace those. It is a perfectly legitimate question, because I am here to protect and support our public services and try to make sure that people can live the very best lives that they can with the quality of services that they deserve.
Colin Killian.
Deputy First Minister share concerns raised by many people about the British government's cruel cuts to welfare and indeed on public services.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for this really important question, because I have no doubt that she, like myself and many across this chamber, will have been contacted over the weekend by many people who are very apprehensive about what is being proposed and how they are going to get by. That the Chancellor needed economic growth. We haven't got economic growth across the UK. That economic growth is required in order to give the Treasury the money to spend on those vital public services and to tackle the under-investment in our public services. The Chancellor didn't get that from her budget statement, and she didn't get that because, in my view, she stifled that economic growth by, for example, measures such as the increases on national insurance employers' contributions. This was an opportunity for her to change course and to reverse out of those bad decisions that she made that has stifled that growth. But instead, this is a Chancellor that decided to balance the books on the backs of those who are least capable of sustaining that. So, of course, I am very supportive of the efforts that we will take to try to ask the Chancellor to change tack, to start to put in place those necessary actions that are required to get that economic growth, so that can produce the much needed money and funds that we want to invest in our public service and supporting people, instead of course, making life more difficult for them.
Ms Killian.
People are beyond apprehensive, some are actually petrified. So will the Deputy First Minister commit to working with the First Minister and indeed the entire Executive to urge the British Government to reverse their punitive cuts, which many see as Tory light?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I think that many people will say, look, be careful what you wish for in terms of this incoming government. The government is in at the moment, that people had a sense that this would be a government that would spend, that would invest in public services. As I said, though, that didn't happen because there simply isn't that economic growth across the UK. But in my view, that is because of decisions that the Chancellor has made and made in the previous fiscal event. She should reverse that. I will be supporting calls for her to do so. Of course, right throughout Northern Ireland, just like across the UK, we want to support people back into work. People want to see any fraud tackled, and that includes in terms of tax evasion. It's not just in terms of benefit fraud. People do want to see those things tackled. But for those who need help, that help should be there. Those are the people who should not be penalised because of this. So I would urge the Chancellor to reverse these decisions, put in place the necessary steps to get that economic growth, and we will be doing everything in our power to support that.
Orla Flynn.
Can I ask the Deputy First Minister if she can provide an update on the Victims and Survivors strategy, please?
Sure.
Thank you. I thank the member for her question. Yes, the Victims and Survivors strategy has been published. There's a number of key actions and schemes that arise from that. We've asked in particular that the Victim Service take a look at the introduction of a capital scheme to support some capital works. Very conscious that across our incredible victims and survivors organisations, that many of them have not had the ability to apply for capital, and that can be anything from the replacement of kitchen and facilities to making their premises more disabled friendly. That of course is such an important issue because of the cohort that those groups do such great work with, but indeed that many of those buildings would require that help and support as well. So we do take a needs-based approach. I was glad to see that in terms of the review of the strategy and the new strategy, many of those needs were the ones that we had already identified, but of course we will be looking at some of those new areas such as a capital scheme, but also ramping up our support for that tackling of that intergenerational trauma as well, which is emerging.
Flynn.
Thanks very much. I thank the Deputy First Minister for that response. I wanted to ask, has any consideration been given or any discussions been had around the regional trauma network? I'm conscious that falls under Department of Health, but if any consideration has been given to incorporating the regional trauma network into the Victims and Survivors strategy, because it cuts across all that intergenerational trauma stuff as well.
Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question indeed. We see that very clearly. At the moment we have the Victims Pension Scheme open, and there's no doubt in terms of the feedback that we get from that. You're seeing many, many people who are suffering not just that trauma right now, but they've suffered that trauma for many decades that need that help and support. So the mental health side of things is huge. I'm really pleased to say it was actually the interface between the Victim Service and our Victim Strategy, working with health, that very much gave rise to that regional trauma network. And of course, that was because it was recognised as part of those assessments of people coming forward how great that need was. So I do think that there needs to be more investment in this area. As we know, bad mental health is such a barrier, not just to life's enjoyment, but of course being able to get out there, to get a job, to stay in a job, to provide for your family, and also to have that enjoyment that people, we absolutely want people to have despite of their loss and what has happened to them in the past.
Monsieur.
Deputy First Minister, could you provide an update to last weekend's visit to the Everton Plaza in Derry?
The First Minister.
Thank you. I thank the member for her question. It was always fantastic to be up in the Northwest, and it was, I believe, a very successful visit. It was great to see such a dynamic company such as Alchemy move into Everton Plaza, and not only just to move in, but to be the very first tenant in there. I think it's good to see because, of course, the Executive Office has invested so much. I think over £30 million has been invested in the Ebrington site, and it was invested because we wanted this to unlock the economic potential of the city. And I think the links through the bridge, the buildings, really pleased to confirm that all of the buildings now have either a tenant signed up or it's held for a tenant. So we are heading towards that full capacity in due course. We're just working with those at the moment. So we really truly hope that Ebrington Edmonton will be that economic driver, and that the North West will see the benefit of that, not just through investment, not just through the creation of jobs, but good jobs at a good remuneration, which will make a big difference to people.
Sure.
Gormaga Concordia and Buhislishan Eirif and Fregrishan. Deputy First Minister, will you commit to working with your executive partners to promote regional balance and to promote places like the North West and other parts of the North as vibrant places to work, live and study?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, of course, we've been very clear that we want to see Northern Ireland thrive, and that doesn't just mean Belfast and the Greater Belfast area. We all represent different constituencies across this place, and I know that we will always fight for the very best deal for all of our constituencies, but the member is absolutely right. If we are going to see the economic growth we want to see across Northern Ireland, then that must mean that every part, every town, every city can thrive and to do well. And I think there's some really exciting things that are happening up there. We've got the opportunity, we've been up several times in the last month or so, and each time we've been up, we've seen such exciting businesses and organisations. We were at the AMP, I think it was called, where there was a lot of innovation and creativity happening as well. So I think it's a really exciting time, not just for Northern Ireland as a whole, but for the North West, and that was definitely the message that we were getting when we were up just last week.
Andrew McMurray.
Mr. Speaker, to ask the Deputy First Minister how the envisaged Philomena's Law would assist with current and future redress schemes administered by the Executive Office.
Oh, right, okay, thank you. I thank the member for your question. Of course, this is an important piece of work for the department. It's a very sensitive piece of work in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to make some progress against that. The work that we are doing, particularly in relation to the mother and baby homes, has been very much shaped by that initial report. There's many different elements to that, and some of that will interplay with what's happening elsewhere. But we do have our own unique set of structures here. That includes the panel. We met very recently with the victims and survivors in terms of the inquiry, the legislation being moved forward as well, and also the redress scheme, which, unlike other schemes, I think this is probably the first time that we've done this where a redress scheme will actually open up at the same time as the inquiry is taking place, in recognition that it's very clear that there were failings in and around all of this. So I do want to pay tribute to those who have campaigned right across these aisles, not just here in Northern Ireland. It's been a very long and a very traumatic journey for them, but I am very hopeful that we are now reaching the point where we are about to commence a number of those key issues, and we really appreciate them sticking with us and hopefully delivering for them on this.
Mr. McMurray.
Thank you, First Minister, for the answer. And on the redress schemes that were mentioned, just to ensure that any redress paid arising from the passive abuse does not affect future benefit entitlements, and if there's an update that could be given on that, it'd be much appreciated.
The First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, absolutely. I'm pleased to confirm that certainly from a Northern Ireland and UK perspective, those benefits will not be impacted by any payment. I think we're currently having discussions with the Republic of Ireland as well to make sure, because we're very conscious that there's been that movement north and south. So some people who will be eligible for payments will reside and be taxpayers in the Republic of Ireland as well. I'd asked for this to be on the agenda for the North-South meeting some 6 months ago, I think it was, where we had the opportunity to raise this directly with the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach. It is an important one because we don't want people being penalised and perhaps being knocked off what support that they have due to getting a rightful acknowledgement and recognition in the payment from the redress scheme.
Sorry, Carl.
That there is bilingual signage in Cardiff, Glasgow, Dublin, transport sites and many others. Would you agree with me that her party approach is out of step with elsewhere in these islands when it comes to the Grand Central Station?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's important that we do ask questions about all of these issues. It is very unclear about the decision that has been made. Has it been the Minister that has made that decision and imposing it on TransLink? Is it TransLink that has made this decision under the direction of the Minister? Is there a justification? And I think many people out there will ask, what is the justification for nearly new signs costing $120,000 being ripped out and replaced by signs because of a particular political agenda of the particular minister? So these are legitimate questions. We make no apology for asking those questions. We'll continue to ask those questions. Of course, importantly, we want to get the answers, and on the back of that I will absolutely commit to this House. I will be raising this at the Executive on Thursday. There's already correspondence in the system asking for the answers to those questions. Those are legitimate questions and we want the answers to them.
Mr. Carroll.
I would say it would be more of a linguistic demand rather than a political agenda. Remain Minister, there's 3 Gael Scullina in the short distance of the site and the Gaeltacht quarter as well. Does the Minister agree with me it's insulting to basically say to Irish language speakers it's okay to speak Irish at home or in Irish language school, but don't dare demand to have the Irish language visible at the biggest transport site in this island? Would she agree with me that's an offensive approach for her party and others to take?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I don't agree with the member. There's a significant amount of investment across language and cultural issues in Northern Ireland, and that includes the Irish language. Everything from a significant investment in the Broadcast Fund through to Irish medium education, the cultural organisations, and indeed we heard reference to Fórsa Gaeilge and the funding issues. £14 million per year are received by that organisation for activities north and south. So of course there is significant funding going in. What I'm saying to the member is that there are legitimate questions to be asked about this particular decision, not least the cost of it, but also in terms of the local community consultations and arrangements that were in place and how this appears to have absolutely ridden roughshod over that. So of course these are legitimate questions and I will continue to ask them, and as said I will be raising this in the Executive on Thursday.
Thank you. That concludes questions to the Deputy First Minister. We move to questions to the Minister for Communities. If you can just take your ease for a moment while the Ministers change desks.